It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
The bye week is over, everyone, and we're here to look at the second half of the season with you. I'm Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest, alongside the number one nature enthusiast, Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41. Nick, I mean, the TikTok's taken off.
Really? Has it?
I believe it has.
I don't feel like it has, but if you do, I'll go with that, buddy.
I mean, if you haven't yet, folks, you're fans of the 41 is the Mic. You need to follow Nick Jacobs on TikTok at I think it's Jacob71.
Yeah, that's what I did, so people could search it that way, even though the handle's technically taken, I think.
You can pretty much find Nick at Jacob71 pretty much everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and if you want Chiefs breakdowns, you want nature breakdowns, there's a lot of things you're going to get there. So, that's
what can I say, Matt? Apparently, I'm an outdoor enthusiast. At least
exactly.
I can toss logs like nobody's business.
It's true. You got the Yellowstone vibe thing going for you. So.
All because of the jacket, man. I am a big fan of that jacket.
The jacket makes it all work.
Mm-hmm. Really brings the nature video together, man.
Really brings it together. And speaking of bringing things together,
yeah,
I mean, this is what I feel like is probably the theme for the Chiefs in the second half of this season. They're sitting at 5-4 in the bye week. Got the Broncos trip coming up. It's a big one. But the one thing that just seems to be kind of a problem for this team right now is just bringing everything together.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. I mean, it's not only consistency on the field. There's been some things that, you might call fissures that we have seen. They've got Josh Simmons back in the building. I mean, this team needs to – and there's a lot of similarities right now between, to me, this team and 2019. And if you remember, the 2019 team was almost in the exact same spot. They were 6-4 after week 10. They were 2 games out of the number one seed in the AFC, or excuse me, they were 3 games out of the number one spot in 3 for the AFC race. Mm-hmm. And that year, they won the AFC West. They came back to take the number one seed away from the Patriots, and they won the Super Bowl. It's there, but this team needs to do exactly what that team did. It needs to come together. And I mean, how do you feel like that the Chiefs got to this spot at 5-4? How did they get to this point in the season?
Yeah, I would say when you look at the grand scheme of it over the 9-game set, a lot of it has to do with the lack of Rashee Rice. And, because when I was watching the Bills game earlier and I watched the coach's film, when Mahomes got into trouble, he was either going to Rice or Travis Kelce. Those are the two that have that language with Patrick, that understand it, and whenever the route's over or it's covered and the play's wrecked at that point because of the coverage they went up against, like Rice will go find a void, Travis will go find a void, and they'll make something happen. They're not going to stand there. They'll move around and they'll handle business and get Mahomes an outlet to throw to. And Patrick didn't have that as much in the Chargers game. And whenever I know they keep saying, hey, whenever Worthy got hurt, there was so much for Worthy in that game. If you have Rice in that game, you don't have to worry about if Worthy gets, injured or hurt or knocked out of that game. Like, Rice makes the difference in that game. Rice makes the difference in the Eagles game. Rice makes the difference in the Jaguars game. And so, like, it just comes back to not having Rashee Rice on there really hurt them and put them behind. Now, in the Bills game, I think it was going to go the way it was going to go no matter what. There was just, in that Bills game, there was a bad third quarter in terms of play calling, that the Bills were sitting on what they thought they were going to do out of those formations with the zone coverage they were doing. The Chiefs really didn't have a lot of different things, and it took, like what I just said, with Rice and Kelce finding voids to create stuff out of plays that really were covered very well. And so I think that's a big portion of why they are where they are. Now, in the second half here, it's a matter of what they can do with the run game and their O-line staying healthy, and then them figuring out how to improve their pass rush and to put some other guys on the field snap count-wise that need to be out there and be okay if they have some lumps here and there because they need to be out there because of the ability that they have athletically.
Yeah, I oftentimes I feel like I play devil's advocate, Nick, and sometimes I play it, you know, from the perspective of why aren't the Chiefs better? Sometimes I play it from why aren't they worse? Maybe they're getting lucky. Last year, obviously had a lot of luck. I mean, I look at 5-4, and my one thought is, hey, this is maybe just the low end of where people thought this team might be because it was a difficult schedule to start the season. There was no doubt about it. I don't know if anybody reasonably had this team 7-2 at this point. 6-3 seemed to be about par for the course. So if you're just talking about this team being one off of where it wants to be, it's not the worst thing in the world. You certainly can look at this and say the glass is half full. There are things that you could look at this team, and you mentioned, I think obviously not having Rashee Rice for 6 games was key. This offense has looked different since he's been back. Even against Buffalo, it was different, even if they were not as successful. And, Mahomes had maybe one of the least accurate days of his career. But you go back to some of these games. I mean, one mistake against the Eagles cost them that game. One mistake, maybe 2 mistakes, maybe 3 mistakes against the Jaguars. You take any one of those plays and reverse them, and the Chiefs win that game. I mean, they're clearly close, but I still see a team that they're just I don't know. I thought they were coming together in that 3-game stretch where the offense and defense were playing spectacular football, incredibly complimentary. But you look at the full 9-game stretch, and there's times where it feels like that this team is just still not all together on the same page, pulling in the same direction. And we've seen the fissures. I mean, Mitch Schwartz had the breakdown this week where, you saw Travis Kelce with some frustration with Kareem Hunt. We've seen Tris Jones and Drew Tranquil have frustration, sometimes even at the podium with some gentle swipes. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a team that is as good as the Chiefs are, that are probably just in need of a team meeting for a couple of the leaders to get together and say, hey, guys, this team's a Super Bowl team if everybody's pulling in the same direction. I mean, it was a lot of like what Terrell Suggs told the 2019 Chiefs when he came in. And maybe that's why the Chiefs should have made a move at the trade deadline. And maybe that's the direct direction to go is, the news of the week, Nick, obviously the big one with the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted the Chiefs to do something, I think, but stand pat, don't make a move. I mean, what do you feel like really led Brett Veach to end up deciding to stay pat and not make a move?
I think they explored some moves, and I think they tried to make some moves, and I know I heard they tried to make some moves, or at least inquired to see what the cost would be. But I think with their limited draft capital, there was a certain threshold they couldn't go past. And as you know, from what Connor Hughes reported out there about Breece Hall, and that the Chiefs were allegedly, or I'm not going to say allegedly, reportedly, because, I mean, Connor's getting that from somebody that's legit within the Jets organization. Let's just be blunt about that. Or some other source. But that's a very Jets favorite source on that one. To where, allegedly Chiefs were at a 4th-round pick, and the Jets were wanting a 3rd. But, that I know that's the report that's out there, but, I wonder how accurate that is about where the difference was in draft capital, and if there was more draft capital that was being requested or what else was being requested, because it seems like each one of the trades the Jets made had something in return, a player in return on top of the draft capital. So I wonder if the Jets were asking, if they were asking for something, were they asking for a player as well? And was there a specific player they had targeted that they were trying to get? That's just wonderment on my part. That is nothing I know for a fact. I just know from a pattern whenever, like hypothetically, say the Chiefs wanted the defensive tackle from the Jets. They were going to have to move money around. They were going to have to give up a 1st and a 2nd. And then, they were able to get Mozzie Smith from the Cowboys. Like, that's a lot. Like, the picks were a lot to begin with. But, like, throwing a player on top of that, okay, so then if you're the Chiefs, what player are you having to potentially give up in return that makes it happen? whenever they did when the Jets did the Sauce Gardner trade, they got Mitchell, the receiver, in return. So like what premium player were you, or player in general, were you having to potentially part with that would have replaced Hall in their backfield? And because it's obviously going to be the way they were doing it, there were certain things they were wanting to add on to their team. So I'm assuming they were probably wanting to add a running back if they were, just because, you signing somebody off the streets at this point. And I don't think they have a lot going on their practice squad, but I think probably just my personal impression is Hall was probably the closest they got to anything potentially happening. And he would have done wonders for this offense. Like what this offense could have been, how unstoppable it could have been. He was what I had been hinting about for weeks at this point. And, privately, that's what I was hinting about. But like, that like he was a guy that it's a contract year for him. So being in this offense and being showcased in primetime games and everything, that was only going to help his draft. That was only going to help his stock in terms of what he could get contract-wise. And so for him not to be here, that's a bummer, because that would have really, for the Chiefs, man, that would have opened up so much more room for activities, as we can call it, in the screen game, in the run game, how they could have done run blocking a little bit differently, and just all that combined. Pass rush-wise, it just looked like there was, from the guys teams were willing to part with, you were going to have to pay a premium. And I think the Chiefs got to a point where they're like, there's just not enough to be able to pay that premium right now.
Yeah, and that's one of my questions for you is, were there any missed opportunities? I mean, did you see any trades that were made that you were like, hey, Chiefs should have been able to match or beat that? I'm not sure there was one.
No, I mean, like the Williams one, I would have loved for them to go after, and I know it would have been giving up a first and a second, potentially in different years, but I don't know what player you give up to add on top of that, because the picks in my book would have already been enough to do that, but I just don't know what player you would have given up to be able to get a player of that caliber along your defensive line, because he would have made a difference. Williams out of the Jets would have made a difference, and he also gives you a great rotation for Chris Jones, to where Chris could stay fresh and you have him as a 3-tech rotating in there, and then you decide whatever you got to down the road after that, in the years ahead. So, or Williams could maybe play somewhere different along the defensive line and rotate at other spots, maybe a 5-tech, maybe whatever. But you would have had another reliable pass rusher that offenses wouldn't have been able to ignore. But outside, but like I said, like there was a lot of maneuvering you were going to have to do for that to potentially be a reality.
Yeah, I mean, I short term, I think that the Chiefs could have figured it out. Long term, there would have been other questions. And you talk about the draft pick compensation. I mean, the draft picks alone, I'm sure the Jets would not be okay with, because they know the Chiefs picks are going to be lower than Cowboys picks. So they would have wanted what they got, the player and something else, in order to beat that. So I think it would have been impossible. And there's a lot of logistics there. I'll say this about the Breece Hall. You mentioned the reports out of New York. That's clearly, let's just connect the dots on how the sausage is made here. Those are coming from the Jets. So we know that that's the Jets side of the story. I always say there's two sides to every story. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle. We haven't heard a Chiefs report. I haven't heard a Chiefs report. I've heard from people in the organization about the Breece Hall move that have simply said, don't believe everything you hear. And that's consistent with me, which is that, okay, the Jet story might be that they wanted the third, but like you said, did they want a third plus? Did they want third and a player? Or was it, well, we want a third, but we don't want a late third. We want upper round third. So, the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. And again, I mean, short term, the Chiefs could have afforded Breece Hall. Long term, I mean, is a third round plus too much to give up for a rental? And if you're the Chiefs and you think Breece Hall is all that in a bag of chips, you can get him for 2026 and beyond when he becomes a free agent and not give up any draft picks. So I mean, we're going to see what happens in the future. I'm with you. I mean, I think a dynamic running back changes this offense, but it didn't get done. So the Chiefs have what they have, and and we'll kind of probably touch on this again in a minute. But the last news of the week that I wanted to touch on, Nick, was the return of Josh Simmons back with the Chiefs, back in the facility. It's a little quiet this week. There are some players and some coaches who have been around. So it looks like Josh is getting acclimated a little bit. But next week was where the rubber hits the road. And I'll admit it, I'm not entirely sure how the Chiefs are going to handle this.
Well, I mean, I think whatever's going on with Jawan Taylor's ankle, which we'll find out whenever Andy Reid talks in the Zoom press conference on Monday, and then throughout the week in the injury report on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll see what they say then. But I mean, look, Josh is their best option at left tackle. He's their most athletic option. He gives them the most stability. Kingsley and him have really good chemistry together, and that showed over the past couple of weeks whenever Josh was there versus when Jalen had to step in. Kingsley just has a better comfort level when he's got Creed and Josh on both sides of him, and they have better combo blocks together. They got better double teams together when they have to pick up and pass off between the two of them. When it's those two, they're better. I'm just going to be blunt. The thing Jalen Moore had going against him is in that Washington game, they were attacking his inside shoulder and they were setting him up a certain way, and they had his kick step time to where they could knock him off balance. Well, Matt, guess what the Bills did there in the second quarter and the third quarter that was causing Mahomes some problems and some pressure is they were going at the picking up and passing off between Kingsley and Jalen, and then they were going at Jalen's inside shoulder multiple times, and Bosa got him a couple times, and so did some other pass rushers. So that's on tape. That's been on tape, and that's going to happen against a guy like Nick Bonita and maybe even Zach Allen when they play Denver. So the Chiefs, if Simmons is up to speed, you got to start him at left tackle. I know it may not seem fair, may not seem that, but what's coming up with this game, and Matt and I will talk about it more here in a minute, this is a monumental game. This is a game that is going to decide how their potential playoff seeding goes and how their season goes by what happens in this game in Denver.
Yeah. And I think, there's going to be some other parts of this next week, too, that are going to have to be dealt with Josh Simmons. I don't know how the Chiefs are going to answer them. I don't know how Josh is going to answer them. I'm assuming that rules be darned, Nick. We might not hear from Josh Simmons this next week. I don't know when we're going to officially hear from Josh Simmons, but there's going to be a lot of questions. And, the players have not gotten a ton of Josh Simmons questions in the last few weeks, I think simply because, a lot of us didn't know what to ask. Mm-hmm. It was a very delicate situation, and, most of the players did not want to talk about it. So even if you do ask them, they probably would have declined. Yep. They were probably told not to talk about it too. So it's going to be a topic now. You can't tell the players, act like it's not happening. There's going to be one of the distractions this week, is figuring out how it all fits back together again. We'll see what they do. I don't know what they do, and I'll be honest, Nick, I'm not sure if the Chiefs know how they're going to handle it.
Sure.
All right, we're heading into the second half of the season now, so I want to ask you, why don't you put on your Andy Reid hat and your Steve Spagnuolo hat, respectively, offensively and defensively. What are you targeting here? What needs fixing with this team? What are the improvements that you want to see over the next 8 games?
First, I'll give you overall. Then if you want me to go into Denver, we can. So what I'll say overall is I personally want to see more Tyquan Thornton in Hollywood Brown's spot. And Hollywood kind of becomes the 4. And Tyquan's out there on a regular basis with Rice and Worthy. Thornton is faster right now, and it showed in the Bills game, and the separation he was able to get and how he was able to get some distance on his route and how he's able to push vertically. I think you need to see more of him out there. Hollywood got some targets, had some drops in multiple weeks, and I just can't have that. In my book, I can't have that level of unreliability. I need sure things right now, because especially against the Broncos. I don't have time to be the best at exercising. I'm out here trying to win. So that's this number one. The usage of the tight ends and how you're going to use them in your run blocking scheme. How do you put that together to give yourself the perimeter for Brashard Smith? Because when you're going to play the Broncos this week, bunch formations, 2-3 tight end sets, and down blocking and sealing off that perimeter to give your speed back the room to roam, that's what they're going to have to do for Brashard Smith. Get him to space and let him get up to top end speed and go. That is the number one thing that they're going to have to do. And we'll see what happens in terms of the screen game. It was very clunky against the Bills, and they just don't have enough practice at it. And the Broncos give specific windows in their zone coverages to be able to attack with a screen game or with route combinations. And the Chiefs are I know the Chiefs are going to be mindful of it, but there's a certain way you got to get that Broncos defense to run, to get them sideline to sideline, and how you seal and how you attack the zones and how you stretch the zones and how you go about that they're going to have to do to be able to consistently move the football against Denver. And from an offensive line perspective, an ideal world, I want Simmons at left tackle. In an ideal world, I'd love to see more at right tackle. But I mean, if Juwan's out there, Juwan's out there. But whoever's out there at the right tackle spot's playing this guy named Nick Benito, and he's going to cause you some problems. You're going to need to chip him, and you're going to need to ear hole him, and you're going to have to do some stuff, and you're going to have to slow him down because Zach Allen's going to be coming from the inside. Benito's going to be coming from around the corner, and Mahomes is going to have to maneuver in that pocket. And given what happened in Buffalo, Denver was taking notes off that, and they will be doing some of those things this upcoming week in that game. Defensive side of the ball, Noel Williams needs to be on the field. Jaden Hicks athletically needs to be on the field. Figure out what role you can put them in that you feel like they're not going to, quote unquote, maybe be a liability or something. If that's how you approach it, Christian Fulton, figure out a way to get him on the field. If there's only certain packages he can be in, then you know what, put those packages in. How about that? So it's just getting to a point now where I don't want to hear excuses anymore, and I will be asking Steve Spagnuolo at the press conference about some of this because, hey, I get Bo Nix as a quarterback. I get that, and I get he's just as great as every single other quarterback that's ever played the game in the NFL, and that's what we'll hear at the podium and everything. I watch tape too, and I see a quarterback that when he scrambles to his right, he can occasionally make the throws, but if you force him to his left, he gets awful. If you bring the right kind of pressure against him, it does not go well for him. He will shortchange throws. He will overthrow. Like, getting to Bo Nix is the number one priority of what this Chiefs defense has to do. And we'll see how J.K. Dobbins' situation is and where he's at from a run game perspective this week. But Mims is the key to the Broncos offense. He is Bo Nix's safety blanket. He's the one who has the speed, and he's the one he can toss it up to. Courtland Sutherland, very talented guy, but it takes some maneuvering to get him the football. And if you scheme it right, like some of the opponents I've seen them go against, they were able to take Sutton out of the game where Mims had to be the guy to burn him. But those two guys can burn you in one way or another. But, yeah, for Chiefs defense overall, pressure. You cannot let the Josh Allens of the world or the other quarterbacks get into rhythm. If you have to bring 5, you got to bring 5. If you've got to somehow, like a Nick Bolton did to where Josh Allen didn't see that blitz coming when I was watching the coach's film, and he makes it look like he's getting ready to drop back in his zone, and then he goes and shoots that gap, and Josh Allen had to slide and give up on the play. Those are the things you need. Those are the wins you need. So defensively, you gotta get some guys on the football field that you continually seem resistant to put out there.
Yeah, and I've said this a couple of times, Nick, and I'll say it one more time for everybody in the back. The Buffalo Bills are the best scout team in the NFL for the Chiefs. Every year they expose every single weakness that this team has, and so Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid have their checklist now. They know what they need to shore up the rest of the way. And, Spags in particular, even though they had a lot of success against tight ends this season, Buffalo put the blueprint out there about how you attack the Chiefs in the middle of the field with tight ends. they've got to shore that up because, they even the Chiefs kind of even signaled it, and that was out there against Washington when they had some breakdowns in the handoff between the linebackers and the safeties and the defensive secondary about who's covering who, and the Chiefs had some monumental breakdowns in that spot. On that pass to Jackson Hawes, Nick Bolton had good coverage, but then he's responsible for coming off and trying to stop Josh Allen's scramble, and then nobody picked up Hawes. So, those things are going to happen. They need to work on those matchups for sure. I was really encouraged, at least, that I know that they brought an end to their streak of 100-yard rushers with James Cook going for 114, 16 yards, but he also had 27 carries that he had to do it. I mean, it was not the most efficient day for James Cook that he's had. I mean, that was just kind of brute strength. They just stuck with James Cook because that was their most effective weapon. It wasn't a terribly effective weapon, but it got the job done. But the one thing offensively, I think that the biggest thing that the Chiefs had going against them, against the Bills, that they need to work on and improve, at least fix, is that the offensive line has been through a lot. They were banged up in that game. Creed Humphrey was the only healthy, non-ill offensive lineman that they finished the game with against Buffalo. They need the bye week. They need to figure out the Josh Simmons situation. I mean, there's some things that they need to fix there because when that offensive line's playing well, Patrick Mahomes is picking people apart. He just can't get in a situation where he's facing pressure every single down. Looking at the rest of the way, I mean, let's face it, the Chiefs had the same goals that they had starting the season, Nick, that they have now. They want to win the AFC West. They want the number 1 seed. What's got to happen for those two things to happen?
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple things real quick, and I'll get to that. What I'm going to say in terms of the Bills, from watching the coaches film, what they were doing there, Matt, is they were using bunch formations to either get the perimeter on the Chiefs in the run game or allow Cook the cutback. And the cutback was when 99 was in, Tillery. And whenever he was in, I'm not kidding when I say this, Matt, they were targeting him. Every time he's out there, I just looked and I was like, is 99 out there? And they're going at him. And then boom, they would. And then boom, they would. And then boom, they would. And
pass rush specialist.
I was like, this isn't a pattern anymore. And like the most dominant play they had was when Chris Jones took the guard 7 yards, almost 7 yards in the backfield. And it was that one play where Nick Bolton, just had a clear line of sight and stuffed Cook on the perimeter for like a 4 or 5 yard loss. That was because Chris forced Cook to go wider and take more depth, and he had to continue to stretch. And like he just gave Bolton like this clear line of sight, build up to speed, and be able to just pummel him. And that was fantastic to see. I enjoyed that play. But when you're talking about the tight ends part right there, you're 100% right. What they were doing is they were trying to get Tranquil and Bolton. One way or another, how can we get the tight end to isolate off of this? And then the other part they were doing is they had an idea when the safeties were going to rotate based on the formation and how they were going to play action fake off that. And so they were counting on Brian Cook to come down on some of these and Chamari Connor to have to rotate over. So there was one seam route that was a big explosive play. And when they did that seam, they were showing 2 safeties on each side. And then Cook comes down to help and run support. Connor has to rotate all the way over. And then they just hit that seam perfectly. Allen knew exactly when and how to hit it, but they had to play action off of it because they knew they'd bring Cook up and the rotation was there. So, like you said, the Bills gave them a ton that other teams are going to try, and the Chiefs are going to get the chance to answer if they fixed it or paid attention when it happened. Now, what the Chiefs need to do for going forward to win the AFC West, they got to beat Denver. You've got to bring Denver back down to where you are at from a loss column, and then you've got to handle business as much as you can the rest of the way. If you're wanting to win the West, if you're wanting to make the playoffs, you could probably take 2 more losses along the way, but you don't. If you're trying to win the West and get a home playoff game, that's the number one thing you're gonna have to do.
I mean, history will say that 10-7 is going to get you into the playoffs. So Chiefs could go 5-3 and back their way in. That's not necessarily a huge obstacle. I mean, Chiefs should make the playoffs, especially given this back end of the schedule. But you're right. To win the AFC West, they've got to go 4-0 the rest of the way against the West. They've got to sweep the division. I mean, sweeping the Broncos, taking the Chargers at home, going to Vegas, and assuming that's still a significant game of some sort in Week 18, then you got to win that. Otherwise, you've got the games you have to win are the games that are the people in front of you. You've got to beat the Colts. I think the Colts are going to come back to the pack. The Patriots, there's not a whole lot you can do about. You just got to hope that the Patriots come back to the pack too. Remember, I mean, the Chiefs 2019, the 12-4, that was what it took to get the 1 seed. 12 or 13 wins could conceivably get the 1 seed. If you're the Chiefs and you go 8-0 and you finish the season at 13-4, I'll say it. I mean, you finish 13-4, you're winning the West, and you got a fighting shot at the 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's got to happen. I mean, if the Chiefs want to win the West, I feel like it's in their control. They just have to sweep these 4 AFC West games. If they want the 1 seed, they're going to need some help.
Yeah, as I'm pulling it up on my phone right now, Denver 8-2. Colts at the time this podcast is released are 7-2. I know they're playing the Falcons early on Sunday morning. Patriots are gonna. We'll see, because the Patriots and Bills, that's gonna be its own little thing. So, yeah, you're gonna need some teams to stumble along the way, and I'm just gonna go to the Denver part of the schedule and look at the Broncos. And
I mean, that's the thing, is that nobody technically has very tough schedules because nobody's really good this year.
So I mean, like, the Broncos got the Chiefs twice, they got the Packers once, and then they got the Jaguars and Chargers. So I mean, the Broncos could stumble 2 to 3 times. It's just a matter of people really being able to rattle Bo Nix. That's the biggest part. How many teams have the front 4 or the front 5 to be able to rattle Bo Nix? Those teams that can do that will bring Denver back down to kind of a 4 or 5 loss team. But I mean, Denver's been battling. They've been winning those close, tight games they should have lost. Like they've been there the entire time. So you gotta, so they're winning the close games that, like, last year people were upset that the Chiefs were winning.
I mean, especially with Joe Burrow out of the picture, at least until the very end of the season. Maybe he comes back. I don't know if he's going to be able to come back at a time that's worth saving the Bengals season. But I mean, it's Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes this year, since Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are kind of out of the picture too. Those are the 2 guys. Everybody else, it's going to be, can their quarterback, 1, remain standing, and 2, withstand the pressure? I mean, are the Patriots going to continue to winning because Drake May doesn't cause them to lose games? I'm convinced that the Colts are going to come back to the pack because Daniel Jones is going to lose them games. Broncos, I feel like, are going to drop because Bo Nix is going to cost them some games. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, I think he's going to cost them some games. So there's only 2 teams in the AFC playoff picture that, and I'm discarding even Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers is 145 years old. So bless his heart, he's a game manager at this point. That team's going to go as far as their defense, and everybody else is going to take them. But it's up to Mahomes and Allen. I mean, and can anybody beat them the rest of the way?
I don't think you're wrong.
Well, we're going to see what happens next week. Next time we see you on 41 is the mic, we will know what has happened between Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix, Chiefs, and Broncos. Obviously, Tuesday night, we will have the Chiefs Digest Q&A, who nobody knows how long those things go anymore. It's supposed to be less than an hour, but I apparently ramble, so you never know what's going to happen.
I know who won't be there.
Maybe a Nick Jacobs TikTok or Hy-Vee Fines will somehow make its way into the show. You never know. Nick, any parting thoughts?
No. I mean, I'll say some closing words here in a minute whenever you're officially done. But that's all I'm gonna have here.
I think all that I have is just to say, hey, remember, give us a 5-star review if you're listening to this on the podcast platform of your choice so that other people can find the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell, subscribe, all those wonderful things. So again, people will hopefully find the show, and we'll see you Tuesday night. Everybody, thank you for listening.
Nature, it's happening.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHP 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.